Vayigash alav Yehuda. Yehuda approached Yosef. Now, of course, you remember what's the background to this amazing story. Yehuda and his brothers hated Yosef. That was 13 years earlier. Well, actually, it was a little bit longer than that, wasn't it? No, it's already 20 years longer, 22 years. 22 years. It was 13 years. 12 years he was in prison. Yosef was in prison. And then there was the 7 years of he was a little bit of time also in Potiphar's house. And then he was in prison. And then, so that's 7 years. That's 10 years in prison, 12 years in prison, another year in Potiphar's house. That's like 13 years. And then 7 years of plenty. 7 years of plenty, that's already 20 years. And then 2 years of famine. 2 years of famine. And that's now Yosef and his brothers. 22 years they haven't seen each other. And now Yosef he recognizes his brothers as soon as they come. And Yehuda, so he drives his brothers crazy. He accuses them of being thieves. And then he says, don't worry, it's not. Just bring your other brother here. You said you have another brother, and you have to bring him. Meanwhile, everybody's getting hungry in the world. Things are getting desperate. And finally, the brothers all come to Yosef together with Benjamin. And Yosef said, this is wonderful. Here's Benjamin. And now I see him. Take your bread and your food, go back home. They go back home and they find, and they discover Yosef sends one of his men after them, and they discover that there's Yosef's divining cup. His magic cup is in one of the bags. Whose bag? Benjamin's bag. Benjamin is the most beloved of his father. All he's got really left of his original plan. Yaakov, his original plan was to marry Rachel, only Rachel, and he was tricked. And now Yosef is gone, so he thinks, and Benjamin now is going to be taken. So Yehuda now comes to Yosef. So now everything is upside down. In the beginning, Yosef was the highest. He was the leader of his brothers, and he said, let's sell Yosef. Let's throw him into a pit. Let's sell him. So they sold him, and they're pretty sure that Yosef is already dead. And now everything is turned around. Now Yosef is the king. He's the top. He's the king of the whole world. This is the dream that Yosef had, that all the stars in the sky and all the bundles of wheat and everything would bow down to him. So here's Yosef is now the king. Okay, but in the future, Yehuda is going to be the king. Mashiach is going to come from Yehuda. Mashiach is going to come from Yehuda. So in the end, he's going to be the highest. And this is basically represented by the Holy Temple. Yehuda is going to be the one that's going to be the Holy Temple. So now we're going to talk about the difference between the Holy Temple, which is going to be in Yehuda's jurisdiction. I mean, that's what it always was anyway. In the time of King David, the Holy Temple was with him and Benjamin. It was in their jurisdiction. And the Mashiach is going to come from Yehuda, and he's going to build a third temple. He's going to build the third temple. But meanwhile, when the Jews got out of Egypt, interestingly enough, they also made this sort of portable temple. And it was called the Mishkan. And there's a big difference between them. And that's basically the difference between Yehuda and Yosef. So now let's see what it is. And how this is relevant to us. How this is relevant to us. Because the whole purpose of a Jew is just to serve Hashem and everything he does. And that's the one of the goals of Chassidut, is to show how every sentence of the Torah teaches us how to do this. So let's go. Vayigash alav Yehuda. Yehuda approached Yosef. Vayomer, and he said to him, Be Adoni. Please, my master, be Adoni. Bogomer, etc. Okay, Hine. Behold. Now, so in other words, Yehuda is now approaching Yosef. Yosef is now the king, and Yehuda is the servant. He's coming to request from Yosef. So Yosef is the top. Now it's going to be something like the Mishkan, and we're going to see the tabernacle in the desert. Hine, because see if it says Karot Beiteinu Arazim, Gomer. It says that the walls of our house are cedar wood. Hine, Yesh Lomer, we can say the difference between the Mishkan in the desert. Now, the Mishkan, in one form or another, it accompanied the Jews when they left Egypt and also when they were in Israel. For 440 years. I mean, the Mishkan basically was used longer than either one of the temples was. The first temple lasted 410 years, and the second temple lasted 420 years. But the Mishkan stood for 440 years when they were in Israel. 440 years. It stood for 440 years. That's when they were in Israel. And then there was another 40 years when they were in the desert that it stood. Hine, Yesh Lomer, I have the difference between the Mishkan, the Tabernacle, and the Beit Olamim, and the Holy Temple. She is Mishkan, that the Tabernacle, Haya, was Arazim, was made from cedar wood. Sometimes they translated acacia wood or something. In any case, it was made of wood. Shitim wood standing up. And the cover of the tabernacle, Haya, was miyurios izim, from hides of goats, oros elim, oros tchashim, other types of animals. That was in the tabernacle. But Beis Hamikdash, the whole entire thing was only from rocks and cement. Tavka. You cannot make any wood that stuck out in the Holy Temple. Couldn't be any wood. Or any sort of they say the porticos of wood, like the Rambam writes in Perek Aleph, Hilchos Beis Habechira, and the Rambam Maimonides writes in his massive masterpiece about the Holy Temple, and it's also in the book Sefer HaChinuch, Mitzvah Tov Tzaddik Beis. Sefer HaChinuch, there it explains amazingly the Holy Temple as being the ultimate commandment. Because it said that one of the big purposes over this in this book called Sefer HaChinuch, it explains that one of the effects of all the commandments is a psychological one. The commandments, in addition to the fact that you're doing God's will, which that's the main thing, but also in the Sefer HaChinuch, he explains how the commandments also have a psychological effect on a person. And when you think about what you're doing, so it has an effect on not just on your body, you just do something, but also on your psyche and on your emotions. And the ultimate commandment, he says over there, is the Holy Temple. Jew would go inside of the Holy Temple, and he would be surrounded by commandments. He would hear the songs of the Levites, and he would see the sacrifices, and he would smell the incense, and all of his senses were surrounded and permeated by commandment. That's the whole idea of the Holy Temple. But in any case, the Holy Temple was basically very different from the Tabernacle. The Tabernacle, the ground was made of mineral, the walls were made of vegetable, plant, the top, the roof was made of plant. So in other words, it went up in level of life, mineral, plant, and animal. But the Holy Temple, the whole thing was made of mineral. The bottom and the top and the walls, it was all made of rocks and stone and cement. Rak shaya kolon sos shel erez Batikra Ulam. There were sunk in there the boards of wood in the ceiling. Okay, but that was not an essential part. That was added. But we have to understand why was it that in the Mishkan, in the Tabernacle, there were of arazim, wood was the main part of the building. That was the walls. The Ohr bakarka, and the dirt was only on the ground, the Mishkan lamata. It was below. And in the Mikdash, the Holy Temple, nefachu, it's exactly the opposite. That the main thing was dirt and stones. Even the roof, the ceiling, haya mehen, was from stones. And it wasn't made of wood. There were just a few beams. There were a couple of beams there. That there was the secondary to the main thing of the building. So why not make the Holy Temple a little more, how do you say, alive? What do you call it? The organic. Oh, the Holy Temple was only stones. Why? And the main thing is, it's known, sheyesh bakal or olam, there is in every world, daled bechinas. And in every world, there are 4 levels. Now, what does it mean, every world? How many worlds are there? So it depends how you look at it. In general, we can say that there's this world, and there's the spiritual worlds, but the spiritual worlds are also divided up, and they're subdivided and subdivided. So that says, like, there's the upper heaven, and then there's the lower heaven. And then in each and every one of these worlds is also divided up into also these 4 categories: mineral, plant, animal, and human. Oh, Shalom Yochanan. These 4 levels. See, okay. Vadomem, and the plant, who lamata, is below. B'medregan level mitzomeach, but sameach lamata minachai. And it was the lowest of all the 4 levels. Just 1 second. Someone wanted to get in. I don't know if they got in or not. Did I press the wrong button over here? 1 second. Let me see participants. Just 1 second. Yes, good.
Can you hear me, Rov? No.
The highest is medaber, human. So in every world, in every level that there is, there's the human aspect. That's at the top of it. We'll see what this is. And then there is what's called the mineral aspect. That's the lowest. So it's a little bit amazing. If so, why is it that the earth, which is the lowest, that's what's dead, right? A person dies and goes to the earth. You put him in the ground, he rots and becomes ground himself. If so, why is it that the ground, Totsit Simcha, why is it that the ground is the only one that really, truly has the power of growth? Shat Someach, Gadol, the Nolad, that plants grow the Nimshach from the ground of the earth. Why is it that the ground depends on the earth? In fact, everything depends on the earth. Haloat Someach Hulamaylam Yadomim. Plants are above, a vegetable is above mineral, shuafar. Why is it that the plants depend on what's below it? It should be exactly the opposite. Humans have more life than all the things below them, animal, etc. We can ask the same question about man. Why does man depend on animal food and plant food? And they all depend on the ground. Why does the ground have this special power of growth? It's true that they can simulate with ground and with water, they can grow things. But that's only secondary. You have to have a special effort to do it, and etc. Unless you like seaweed, like to eat seaweed, it grows in the ground. But except for that, plants grow from the ground. Everything grows from the ground. But the main thing is the low raya zeh. You cannot compare one to the other. That even though the ground is below in level from plant, and the ground has less life, the ground is less mobile, right? The ground doesn't move. And plants, at least they move. There's the sign of life. So you might think that the ground is the lowest. This is, yes, it's true. In one way, it's lowest. It is the lowest. Yes, it is. Less mobility, less consciousness. Nevertheless, Yeshbo Mila Yatera, ground has an amazing quality, mitzad shorsho, because of its source. It's higher than plant and animal. The source of the ground. Shalom Uvracha, good morning. Why? What do you mean the ground is higher? What does that mean? And the Yene Yedua, because it's known, Machlokat Tanaim, there's an argument of the Tanaim, of the great scholars of the Talmud, and the Gemara Chagiga. The Tanaim, it says the least of them had the power to raise the dead. So the arguments that they have in the Torah are arguments that very, very, even though they've come out to be very simple, what we should do, but still the arguments are really arguing over what is God's will. How should God's will be manifested in the world? That's the question. So here's an argument of the Tanaim. Chad Elmore, one of them says the heavens was created first. Shamayim Kadma Ohr43c. When God created the world, He created the heavens first. Like it says, Bereshis Bor Elokim, es Shamayim es Ohr43c. God said, created the heavens and the earth. We're going to see what this has to do with the temple and the tabernacle. Chad Omer, and the other one says, Eretz Kadma, that the earth was first. Like it says, Beyom Osos, Eretz v'Shamayim. If you look over in the Torah, in the whole story of the creation, so the story of creation is sort of repeated twice. The first time it says that the heavens is first, and the second time it says that the earth is first. Eretz v'Shamayim, the earth and the heaven, and Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chayim. It says that both of them are the words of God. Both of them are the words of the living God. How so? Oh, how is this so? Both of them are the words of the living God. Either the heavens was first, or the heavens were first, or the earth was first. How could they both be correct? That in thought, in God's thought, Eretz Kadma. And the first thing that God thought about was creating the earth. Then the earth was before the heavens. What did God, his original, what was his plan? Like a person builds a house, right? What's the plan? The plan is he doesn't look at the plans first, and then he calls the architects and all these people and the workers and the builders, and then they build, right? They just build the plans. First of all, they make all these plans, and then they build, right? And then they see what comes out. It doesn't work that way. First of all, he has in his mind, I want to make a house. Let's sit down and talk about what type of house I want. I want a house with 2 stories. I want a house like this. I want a house over here facing the east, facing the west. What type of house? As soon as you got the picture of what the house is going to look like, a lot of times these architects even they draw a picture of the finished house. This is what it's going to be. This is the planned house, the planned building. And then after that, they start making all the spiritual plans. So the first thing in God's thought was the finished earth. The earth was before the heavens. Because but when actually God started to build, then he uses the spiritual plans first. The plans, like when you build a house, right? So the architect and the workers and the builders and this, those are all like the heavens. That's the means to the final goal, which is your finished house. The same thing God. First of all, he had in his mind the earth with me and you on it, sitting here learning with Zoom, right? That's what God had in his mind, the end. And everything that happened in the middle, that's called the heavens. All the spiritual plans, all that, etc. So when God, the first thing God had in his mind was the finished physical world. But the first thing that he used in practice, when it came down to action, first of all, he created the heavens. The heavens were first. He has to have all these plans and spiritual levels with angels and things like that. It's called the chain of creation. And the Inyan was like this. This is the same thing as what we said before, that the ground has the power of growth. Because the first thing in God's thought was the last thing, the finished world. That's what we say also Shabbat. Shabbat was the first thing that rose up in God's mind. Because what was Shabbat? Even though there were other 6 days of creation before Shabbat, but the main thing in God's mind was the finished world. Shabbat, everything was finished. So that's what it says. We say in the prayer, Lacha Dodi. Sof Maaseh b'machshava techila. Sof Maaseh says, Alken, therefore, Shosha b'machshava. Therefore, the source of the earth comes from a higher level. It comes from God's thought. This is the beginning of God's thought. But the heavens, that they are the beginning of deed, when God actually started to create, that's the last level of God's thought. That the last deed, what comes out finally, that was olav of machshava. That's a sign that it was first in God's thought. Lochin, therefore, it's someach, therefore, plants, they're higher than physical. Why are they? And also, animals are higher than plants. Why? This is according to the order of creation, how God created, not in the order of God's thought, but in the God's deed. This is the order of God's deed. That first of all, in the worlds, that the level of deed, action, mineral, and dirt of the earth, this is the last. This is the end, the last thing that was created. And therefore, that's how it looks in the world. It's dead. The earth is dead, doesn't move, doesn't have consciousness. And that Someach and Chai are above it in level. That's what it means in the beginning. God created the heavens and the earth. Nevertheless, but that's the way the earth looks to us. But in the source, b'machshava, and God's thought, hakaduma, God's primordial thought that was there before time or space or anything, the earth is the first thing. It's the most important to God, the earth. The earth is more important, l'kulam b'machshav, in some way. And therefore, davka bo, only in it, yesh hakoach, is the power, the sign that the earth is really higher than the other levels, is that only the earth has the power of growth. Mitzad shorsha, because of its source. Looking at Sameach, therefore, plant, animal, and human, kulam makablim mimeno, everything depends on the earth. Behold, b'mishkan, in the tabernacle, there was not the ultimate completion yet. The tabernacle was only temporary. Like it says, I will walk with the Jews in a temple, in a tent, in a tent, mishkan, and in a tabernacle, temporary. Therefore, therefore, because it was only temporary, therefore it was made in the order of the chain of creation of the worlds. How they were created. That in this, the heavens are first. Therefore, the walls of the tabernacle were from wood, she'ein bechinas tzomeach, which is the level of plant. Rak karka, only the ground was made from dirt. The ground was below. This is how it is in the chain of the creation of the worlds. Shetzomeach, that the plant, lamaila, is higher than the mineral. Lochi, and therefore nasa krushim me'arozim. Therefore, the walls of the temple were made from cedar trees, very high trees. She'er is gadol begova mod. It's very, very high. Shezeu bechinas elyona shebetzomech. It's the highest of all of the plants, right? It grows up to the highest. L'mayla maylam bechinas domim, higher than the level of domim, of mineral. The mineral doesn't grow at all. The earth doesn't grow. I mean, there are, truth says, levels of things that they're covered over, maybe by the wind. It covers over in the course of time, so that there's the ruins and the ancient things are buried underneath. But it's not because the ground grew. The ground is static; it doesn't do anything. It just can be blown by wind or whatever. And the covering, the ceiling of the tabernacle, hayam yurios ve'oros. It was from hides and from skins of animals. Elim b'tchashim. These the elim with rams and some sort of animal that's called tchashim. Nobody knows exactly what it is, especially animals. Shehu b'chinas hachai. This is the level of chai. This is the level of animal. Shalom mailam b'drega. This is higher than the bechinas of tzomeach. Shalom Herschel. Therefore, Yareos, therefore the skins, that there's a level which is called the makifim. These are the surrounding levels. They were spread, prusim ala kotli mishkan. They were spread over the walls of the tabernacle. They were the top level. That was chai. It was from animal, which is above tzomeach. So what do we want to say? We want to say that the tabernacle, this was an example of creation, of how the creation is, right? The top is more spiritual than the middle. The middle is more spiritual than the bottom. In other words, the higher levels are like the heavens, and the lower levels are like the earth. The top in the Mishkan was made from animal. The walls were made from plant, and below that on the ground was made from dirt. That all this was according to the order of Milo Madregas Ishtaushalus, of the order of the creation of the world. Bishtaushalus of Brias Nilamailamata, going from above to below. This is what it says when God actually started creating the world, that the heavens were first. But in the holy temple, which that's our goal. There is the ultimate completion. What the ultimate completion? The whole thing was made of stones, inanimate, unconscious stones. That was the highest, because there it was set, permanent, eternal. Shalakodesh Baruch Hu. Like it says, Zot menuchati adayad. This is my resting place forever. If the Jews wouldn't have sinned, then there would have been the first temple, and that would have been it. It would have been forever. And again, they had another chance. The second temple was supposed to be eternal, but it didn't exactly work out that way, as we see. But the third temple will be different. While the third temple will be different, we'll see why. Just in short, the main reason it'll be different is because we have Chassidut, and we can appreciate a little bit what it means, godliness in this world, the value of the physical world, what we actually do. We'll see. That the holy temple, that the third temple, that the temple, the first, the second, and especially the third, will be like the world to come. World to come. Well, there'll be the raising of the dead. Dead is like the ground. The dead people, they're right bones, and who knows if there's anything left. It's one little bone. That's all that's left of, grandpa, and that's it. And it's all going to raise up. We'll see that the amazing highness of the physical world. Mashiach be'elef v'shavi. That's what's going to be what's called in the seventh, what do they call it? 7,000-year period. There's a word for it. What is it? The epic or something like that. It says that the world is going to be 6,000 years. So in the 7,000, that's the maximum that it can reach. In any case, in the sometime in the 6,000th year, in the course of the last 6,000 years, which is right now, as the world is supposed to reveal it, the true creator of the world and the purpose of the world will be revealed in the physical world. Like it says, that's what's going to be. And it says, Menucha l'chai olamim. Then there'll be a real rest. Shalot tit'aleh eretz elyona. Sha'az, that then will tit'aleh eretz elyona. And then there will be revealed what's called the upper world, which is the level of malchut of atzilut. It will be higher than all of them. In other words, the bottom level will be higher than everything. Malchut atzilut, this is a Kabbalistic name for God's speech. Right? In the Bible, it says that God spoke and created the world. Well, we know that God doesn't have teeth and lips and a throat and organs of physical speech, but it says that God spoke. What does it mean? It also says that man is created in God's image. So God must have some sort of an image, right? But no, God doesn't have an image. So this is talking about, generally speaking, the spiritual aspect of atzilut, which on one hand is there, and on the other hand, it's not there. That's the world of atzilut. The world of atzilut is pure godliness, but nevertheless, it takes a form. This is a big mystery, which is not a mystery. It's a mystery. This is spoken about in a book called Sefer Yetzirah, the book of formation. It's a book which was given to Abraham by God about how he made the world. And this talks about atzilut. Malchut of atzilut is God's speech. And in the future, in the beginning, God's speech was the lowest. That's what it created the world with. In the future, God's speech is going to be shown to be the highest of everything. The lowest level, God's speech, that's Malchut, is the lowest. It's going to be the highest. Like it says, like it says, a good wife, a valiant wife is the crown of her husband. Nowadays, the woman is the receiver, like Mother Earth, right? The earth receives everything. So it's called the feminine aspect. That's why God is always referred to as masculine, because he's always giving. That's the giving aspect. That's like the heavens. What says in the future, we're going to see that this physical world crowns God. In other words, the physical is actually the highest aspect of the Creator. That this physical world will be a crown to what's called Zer Anpin of Atzilut, God's emotions. Sometimes that's what's called the Kodesh Baruch Hu. It'll be a crown over the Kodesh Baruch Hu. What this means, I have absolutely no idea. It's when the raising of the dead, but it's going to happen. That's for sure. The dead will raise. Yes, that's one of the 13 principles of Judaism. And here the Rebbe explains it in a short way, that what is it that the physical, actual lowest levels that we can possibly imagine will become alive, will be the highest. Hainu mitzad shorsha, because of its source, sha'olta b'machshava, that it rose up, because in reality, this physical world rose up in God's thought first. Eretz kadma l'shamayim, that the earth is before the heavens. It says that in the future, the ground is going to cry out, right? Who are you to walk on me? If you're walking on the ground and you're not doing something holy, learning Torah, thinking positive thoughts, then the ground is going to say, hey, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, right? The ground will teach us lessons. And therefore, Beit HaMikdash, in the Holy Temple, that the Holy Temple was me'ein olam haba, was something like the world to come, was something like this idea of the raising of the dead. Nasa was made ikra by it. Therefore, in the Holy Temple, the main thing of the house was made from avanim, from stones, afar and dirt. That's where it should start. Stop. The main house, the holy temple, that was permanent, and that's going to be like the raising of the dead. We're going to see how important the physical world is. That's why it was made from the lowest physical elements. This is the minerals. Afagag, even the roof, v'amaziva, and the rim around the top of the house of the Beit Hamikdash. Shehi bechinat makif. This is what's called the surrounding levels. The highest levels of the temple were not made from high substances. It was made from avanim, dirt and offer. Velomar razim, and not from wood. Why? Because this is the way it's going to be in the future. Shebechinat eretz, at the level of the earth, kadma will be first. Eshet chaylateret bala. In other words, a good wife, the physical world, the receiver, will become ateret bala, will become the giver. Mitzad shorsha. That's why also it says that one of the main things of the raising of the dead will be the commandments that we did. Going to heaven, that depends mostly on the Torah. But the raising of the dead depends on the commandments, because the commandments are usually just from physical things. Physical things. We'll see the highness of the physical. Right? You can only do commandments with your physical body. It says in heaven, in the heavenly court up there, they learn Torah. And a person who learns Torah is with great assiduity the whole day. So if he has questions, he gets answered in dreams. Because the Torah is very spiritual. The Torah, the source is spiritual. But the commandments, that comes from God's essence. The physical. That's what it means in the future. The lowest thing, the wife, the receiver, because the mitzvah, the commandments, they receive from the Torah. There are only a few boards made from cedar wood, which were in the roof of the holy temple. They were like tamchim levad. They were sort of like supporters. They were supporters, like on the side, like beams that were like at a slant that supported the main roof, manasa, which was made from mineral, like we have nowadays, people that support the Torah, people that give money to learn Torah. The supporters are very important. The whole yeshivas of Chabad are called tomchei tamimim, supporters of the of the wholesome one. So the whole idea of the temple, the holy temple, I don't know why they call it a holy temple. The holy house, Beit HaMikdash, was that it was physical, as physical as possible, because that's going to be the greatness in the future, is revealing the highness and the miraculousness of the physical, how precious this physical world is, doing the commandments. Near Balil, we can see clearly, Gamken also, this level, Sheyesh Ba'oret, there is in the earth, Mila Yasir, we can see that in the earth there is a big advantage. Just one moment, please. Yes, Kane. אני אצלצל לך, 9:30 אני אצלצל. הנה, near Balil, we can also see clearly that the earth also has this another quality. And in addition to the fact that the earth has the ability to grow, but the earth also, when this is really tied together, bittul. The earth has this thing of, how do you call it? Surrender, being exactly what it is. Sheyesh bo shehi midras tachat kapat raglei hakol. Everyone treads on the earth. The earth supports everyone. The Jews are compared to the earth, right? The Jews are compared to the earth. Masha Enkin, which is not the case. Someach, which is not the case. Plant life, Shen Gedalim, Begova, which they grow up high. This bittul, this, like it says by Moses, that he was more humble than anybody in the world. What does it mean, humble? All I am is what God is creating. I don't have anything of my own. Even my free choice, even I'm only doing what God wants. All of my qualities. Moses had amazing qualities. It says, just for example, the last day of Moshe's life, the last day of his life, he wrote 12 Sefer Torahs, 13 Sefer Torahs. He wrote 12. It takes a person a half a year, however long. He wrote tremendous qualities and abilities that Moshe had. Nevertheless, it says he was the most humble person in the world. Why? Because everything that he had, he just felt that it was a gift from God. This bittul, this tremendous surrender to Hashem, using all of your qualities only to serve God, being a dynamic person only in the way that God wants, like says King David, he didn't even sleep. Mitzad Shorsha Nala comes from its high source in God's thought. God's thought never stops. This is the ultimate level of surrender and bittul. Like it says about Moshe Rabbeinu, Nachnu ma, and we are nothing. Nachnu, we are nothing. Misham, from there, Nimshach mislabish bechinas bittul. From there, we can have this aspect of bittul, total surrender of the earth. Mitzad, because of this total surrender and awareness of the Creator, the earth, therefore, titaleh, will be elevated in the future to be ateret bala, to be the crown over the Creator, so to speak. The creation will be higher than the physical, will be higher than the spiritual. Therefore, the Holy Temple was made from stones, davka. Therefore, was made from stones to show the amazing high quality that we don't even have. We have no idea what it is now, but it's hinting to us that in the future we'll realize how amazingly high the physical world is. I mean, we'll have more of an appreciation of the spiritual also. It's not that we'll see that all the spiritual worlds are nothing, it'll devaluate the spiritual. No, the spiritual will be worth, we'll realize it's a million times more real than what we thought. But the physical world is infinitely more real than what we thought. How is this going to be? And we'll learn tomorrow more, and we'll understand what to expect. Now we'll learn a sikh of the Rebbe.